The year was 2175, and humanity stood on the precipice of an interstellar age. The deserts of Giza, once the cradle of civilization, now hosted an archaeological project of unprecedented scale. Beneath the weathered visage of the Great Sphinx, an ancient secret slumbered, waiting for the right moment to awaken. Dr. Samira El-Tayeb, a renowned quantum archaeologist, had spent the last decade leading Project Ra Horizon. Her team, an eclectic mix of engineers, AI experts, and historians, was tasked with probing the enigmatic energy readings detected beneath the Sphinx. For years, the signals had been faint, enigmatic, and frustratingly indecipherable, until now. Late one November evening, Samira and her team huddled in the control tent. The quantum imaging scanners hummed softly, casting a pale blue glow over the rows of consoles. Hadi, the lead systems analyst, stared intently at his monitor, his brow furrowed. Dr. El-Tayeb, the energy signatures fluctuating again. Hadi paused, his fingers flying over the keyboard. It's stabilizing. And it's interacting with our systems. Samira leaned in, her sharp eyes scanning the data. Interacting how? Is it mimicking our frequencies? No, Hadi replied, his voice tinged with unease. It's adapting. It's like it knows we're here. Before she could respond, the ground beneath them rumbled. The Sphinx, silent and immutable for millennia, emitted a deep, resonant hum. The air grew thick with static, and a beam of azure light shot from the crown of the Sphinx, slicing through the night sky. Farid, the team's robotics engineer, stumbled into the tent. The scanners are off the charts. Whatever's down there, it's waking up. The hum intensified, reverberating through the sand like the heartbeat of the earth itself. Suddenly, the consoles in the tent flickered and went dark. A moment later, a voice, ancient and mechanical, resonated from the speakers. Initialization complete. Cosmic Event Protocol. Tefnut Prime engaged. The team froze, their minds racing. The words were in archaic Egyptian, yet somehow they understood them. Samira's heart pounded. Farid, is this some kind of AI glitch? Farid shook his head. Not unless the glitch is 5,000 years old. The beam of light began to ripple, forming a holographic projection in the sky. It displayed a star map, familiar yet subtly wrong. A cluster of stars burned brightly at its center, pulsing in a slow, ominous rhythm. Beside the map, hieroglyphs scrolled downward, glowing with a surreal golden light. Samira stepped forward, her voice steady despite the chaos. Translate that. Now. Hadi frantically tapped at his portable translator, and the text unraveled into modern language. The translation sent a chill through the team. The Devourer returns. 7 days remain. What Devourer? Farid whispered, his face pale. Before anyone could respond, the Sphinx emitted another pulse of energy. This time, the sand around it began to shift, revealing hidden mechanisms buried for millennia. Panels slid open, and a staircase descended into the earth, leading to a chamber bathed in faint blue light. Samira tightened her grip on her flashlight. We need to go down there. You can't be serious. Farid exclaimed. We have no idea what's waiting for us. We don't have a choice, Samira said, her voice firm. Whatever this is, it's not just ancient. It's active. And it's warning us about something we can't ignore. With trepidation, the team descended into the hidden depths of the Sphinx. The air grew colder, carrying a metallic tang. The chamber walls were etched with glowing hieroglyphs, pulsating in harmony with the Sphinx's hum. At the center of the room stood a pedestal, and atop it, a shimmering quantum core, a crystalline structure that seemed to bend light itself. As the team approached, the core flared to life. A holographic figure materialized above it, a priestly figure draped in ceremonial garb, its eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. Welcome, the figure intoned in flawless modern speech. You have awakened the Silicon Sphinx. The fate of your world rests in your hands. The team exchanged uneasy glances. Samira stepped forward, her voice steady but tinged with awe. Who or what are you? The figure's gaze bore into hers. I am 8 and 9, the custodian of this mechanism. It was created by the priests of Ra to solve the great cosmic cycle, a threat that emerges every 5,000 years. Your civilization is unprepared for what comes. I will guide you, but the time is short. What is this threat? Hadi asked, his voice barely above a whisper. 8 and 9 raised a hand, and the star map reappeared, highlighting a fiery, shifting object hurtling toward Earth's solar system. The Devourer, it said. A rogue celestial entity, drawn to life and energy. It consumes all in its path. Your ancestors built this system to calculate a solution, but the calculations remain incomplete. You must finish what they started. Samira's mind raced. A rogue celestial entity? An ancient quantum computer designed to save the planet? It sounded impossible, but the evidence was undeniable. We'll do whatever it takes, she said firmly. 8 and 9's eyes flared. Then prepare yourselves. The calculations require human insight, and the challenges ahead will test the limits of your intellect, courage, and unity. The countdown has begun. The team stood in the eerie blue glow, their mission clear but their path uncertain. Outside, the beam of light from the Sphinx intensified, a beacon that would soon draw the attention of the entire world. The sands of Giza had kept their secret for millennia, but now, humanity would face a cosmic threat unlike anything it had ever imagined. And the Silicon Sphinx, a relic of the ancient past, held the key to their survival, if they could unlock its mysteries in time. The hum of the Silicon Sphinx resonated through the underground chamber, filling the air with an almost palpable energy. Dr. Samira El-Tayeb steadied her breathing, her mind racing to grasp the enormity of the situation. The holographic figure of 8 and 9 hovered above the quantum core, its expression a mixture of serenity and urgency. Where do we start? Samira asked, breaking the heavy silence. 8 and 9 extended its hand, and a section of the wall illuminated, revealing a grid of symbols and equations written in glowing hieroglyphs. The first sequence must be solved to unlock the Sphinx's full computational power. Each sequence will increase the system's capacity to calculate solutions to the Devourer's trajectory. Farid stepped closer, examining the grid. This isn't just ancient Egyptian. There are fragments of quantum algorithms embedded here. It's like a hybrid language. Hadi squinted at the symbols. I recognize some of these. They resemble qubit optimization problems. If we align the hieroglyphs correctly, it should stabilize the system. Samira nodded. Then we work together. Let's divide the symbols into groups and tackle them one at a time. The team quickly divided into pairs, each focusing on a different portion of the glowing wall. As they worked, the hum of the Sphinx seemed to synchronize with their movements, growing louder with every solved fragment. Suddenly, the hologram flickered. 8 and 9's voice cut through the chamber. Warning. External systems detecting unauthorized presence above ground. Samira's heart sank. What kind of presence? Unidentified aerial craft, 8 and 9 replied. Global powers have detected the activation signal. They are converging on this location. Hadi cursed under his breath. Of course. A beam of light shooting into space was bound to attract attention. Samira clenched her fists. We don't have time for interference. 8 and 9, can you block their approach? Defensive measures were deactivated millennia ago, 8 and 9 said. However, the Sphinx's structural integrity can withstand most conventional assaults. Let's hope it doesn't come to that, Samira muttered. Farid, Hadi, keep working on the sequence. I'll deal with whoever's up there. Samira climbed the stairs, her flashlight casting flickering shadows against the ancient stone walls. As she emerged into the desert night, the once quiet sands of Giza had transformed into a chaotic scene. Helicopters hovered overhead, their searchlights illuminating the Sphinx. Military vehicles approached from all directions, their headlights piercing the darkness. A commanding voice blared from a loudspeaker. This is Captain Ivanov of the United Earth Coalition. Identify yourselves and surrender control of the site immediately. Samira stepped forward, raising her hands to show she wasn't a threat. I'm Dr. Samira El-Tayeb, leading a sanctioned archaeological team. This site is of global importance. You can't just barge in. The captain's voice was firm. We have reason to believe this activation poses a threat to global security. Stand down, or we will be forced to take action. Samira's mind raced. She needed to buy time for her team. Listen to me, she shouted. This isn't a weapon. It's a defense mechanism, a last resort against a cosmic threat. If you interfere, you'll doom us all. The captain hesitated, the searchlights lingering on Samira. Before he could respond, a sudden pulse of energy erupted from the Sphinx, sending a shockwave through the sand. The helicopters wobbled, struggling to stabilize, and the soldiers scrambled to maintain their footing. 8 and 9's voice echoed in Samira's earpiece. Sequence 1 complete. Energy output increased to 25%. Warning. External forces risk destabilization. Great timing, Samira muttered. She turned back to the soldiers. This is proof that we're working to save the planet. Stand down and let us finish. Before the captain could reply, One of the helicopters began to spiral out of control, its systems disrupted by the Sphinx's energy field. Samira's stomach dropped as she watched the craft plummet toward the ground. Without hesitation, a secondary beam of light shot from the Sphinx, enveloping the falling helicopter in a cocoon of shimmering energy. The craft hovered for a moment before being gently lowered to the sand. The soldiers stared in stunned silence. Samira seized the moment. If it wanted to destroy you, it would have. Let us do our work, or there won't be a world left to save. Captain Ivanov's voice came again, this time softer. We're standing by. For now. But you'd better be telling the truth, Doctor. As the soldiers held their positions, Samira rushed back into the Sphinx. The team had made progress, the glowing grid now pulsing with energy. We finished the first sequence, Farid said, his face damp with sweat. But 8 and 9 says the next one is even more complex. Samira glanced at the quantum core, now spinning faster, its crystalline facets glowing brighter. Then we push harder. This is just the beginning. 8 and 9's hologram appeared again. Second sequence initiated. Prepare for external disruptions. The Devourer draws closer, and its influence is already affecting your world. Samira swallowed hard, realizing that the ancient AI's warning wasn't just about the rogue celestial entity. The challenges they faced now, both human and cosmic, were only the start of an unraveling mystery that stretched across time, space, and the very fabric of existence. The chamber buzzed with tension as the second sequence's grid materialized on the wall. This time, the symbols weren't just hieroglyphs or mathematical notations. They shimmered and shifted, morphing as though alive. The patterns seemed to react to the movements of the team, adapting faster than their algorithms could keep up. 8 and 9's holographic figure hovered, its glowing eyes scanning the team. The second sequence requires synchronization of thought, action, and understanding. The ancient priests encoded it as a test of unity, an essential trait for facing the Devourer. Farid frowned. What does that even mean? We solve it together, or it doesn't work. Precisely, 8 and 9 replied. Disunity will cause the sequence to destabilize, resetting progress and increasing the system's strain. Samira clenched her fists. Then let's get on the same wavelength. Everyone, focus on the symbols. If we can't sync, the world doesn't stand a chance. The team gathered in a tight circle, their gazes fixed on the undulating patterns. Hadi was the first to speak. Look at this cluster. It's cycling through prime numbers, but there's a repeating gap, almost like it's asking for a correction. Farid nodded. And this section here, wave interference patterns. If we align the phase angles to match the numbers Hadi's seeing, it might stabilize. I've got a harmonic resonance pattern over here, Samira added. It's shifting in response to the changes in the grid. Everyone stop, said Layla, the youngest member of the team, her voice calm but firm. She'd been quiet up until now, working diligently in the background. We're all trying to solve it in isolation. What if that's the problem? 8 and 9 said it needs unity. What if we're supposed to work together in real time? The team exchanged uncertain glances. Samira was the first to nod. She's right. Everyone, let's synchronize our efforts. Call out your observations. Act together. They began to collaborate, their voices overlapping but cohesive, like the notes of an orchestra tuning to the same key. Farid adjusted the angles of the interference patterns while Hadi corrected the prime number sequence. Layla pointed out subtle shifts in the resonance, while Samira directed the overall strategy. The grid responded, its chaotic fluctuations slowing. The symbols began to align, snapping into place like pieces of a cosmic puzzle. The chamber's hum grew louder, and the air vibrated with energy. Suddenly, the grid glowed a brilliant gold, and a wave of heat radiated outward. The team staggered back as the energy washed over them, leaving behind a strange sense of clarity. Sequence 2 complete, 8 and 9 announced. System capacity increased to 50%. Warning, Devourer trajectory accelerating. 5 days remain. Samira wiped sweat from her brow. Only 50%? That sequence almost killed us. There are 5 sequences in total, 8 and 9 said. Each one unlocks greater capabilities. With each success, the Sphinx will reveal more about the Devourer and how to stop it. Layla stared at the grid, which had now dissolved into the wall. What happens if we fail one of the sequences? The system will reset, 8 and 9 replied. Progress will be lost, and the probability of global survival will decrease exponentially. Not exactly comforting, Hadi muttered. Before Samira could respond, 8 and 9's voice grew sharp. External disruption detected. Hostile forces approaching. What now? Samira groaned. The team rushed to the surface, emerging into a scene of chaos. The military vehicles surrounding the Sphinx were under siege by sleek, black drones unlike anything humanity had ever seen. The drones were silent, their movements unnaturally smooth, as if piloted by something far beyond human comprehension. Captain Ivanov's voice crackled over a nearby comm unit. Dr. El-Tayeb, we're under attack. These things aren't human-made. Samira grabbed the comm, hold your position. We need to keep the Sphinx secure. If those drones reach the chamber, it's over. As she spoke, one of the drones fired a beam of concentrated energy, disintegrating a military transport in a flash of light. Soldiers scrambled for cover, their weapons ineffective against the alien machines. Samira turned to her team. Farid, can we use the Sphinx's defenses? They're ancient, he replied. If 8 and 9 says they're offline, there's no way we can. He stopped as 8 and 9's hologram appeared beside them, its form now projected outside the Sphinx. The defense systems can be temporarily reactivated, but only at 50% capacity. It will require manual overrides in the sublevels. Samira didn't hesitate. Show us how. 8 and 9 extended its hand, projecting a holographic map of the Sphinx's interior. There are 3 control nodes. Each must be activated simultaneously. Failure will result in system collapse. Divide and conquer, Samira said, her tone steely. Hadi, Farid, Layla, pick a node. I'll take the third. As the team sprinted back into the Sphinx, the battle outside raged on. The drones swarmed closer, their beams carving through vehicles and sand alike. Captain Ivanov's forces were barely holding the line. Inside, the air grew colder as the team descended to the sublevels. Each control node was located in a separate chamber, connected by narrow corridors that seemed to stretch forever. Samira reached her node first, a pedestal covered in glowing hieroglyphs. She placed her hands on the surface, and the symbols flared to life. I'm in position. Everyone report. Almost there, Hadi grunted, his voice echoing through the comm. Same, Layla replied, her breathing heavy. Ready, Farid said a moment later. On my mark, Samira instructed. 3, 2, 1, activate. The chambers erupted with light as the control nodes powered up. The Sphinx trembled, its ancient mechanisms roaring back to life. Outside, a series of energy pulses shot from the Sphinx's eyes, striking the drones with pinpoint precision. One by one, the alien machines disintegrated, their remains scattering across the desert like ash. Captain Ivanov's voice came through the comm, whatever you just did, it's working. Samira allowed herself a brief smile. We're not done yet. 8 and 9, what's next? The hologram appeared, its expression grave. The third sequence is ready. But be warned, the next test will not only challenge your minds. It will test your ability to confront fear itself. Samira exchanged a glance with her team, their resolve hardening. The Devourer was coming, and the clock was ticking. There was no turning back now. The rumble of the reactivated Sphinx reverberated through its ancient halls as Samira and her team returned to the main chamber. Dust drifted down from the ceiling, and the glowing quantum core pulsed like a heartbeat. 8 and 9's holographic form flickered back into view, its expression more urgent than ever. The third sequence is prepared, it said. But it will not be like the others. Samira frowned. What do you mean? How is this one different? The first 2 tested your intellect and unity, 8 and 9 explained. This sequence will confront your most primal fears. It is a safeguard encoded by the priests of RA to ensure that only those with unwavering courage can progress. Farid glanced uneasily at the glowing chamber walls. And if we fail this one? 8 and 9's voice darkened. Failure will destabilize the system. The energy feedback could cause catastrophic collapse, rendering the Sphinx inoperable. So, no pressure, Layla muttered, trying to lighten the mood. No one laughed. Samira straightened. We've come this far. If the priests could face their fears to save their world, so can we. 8 and 9, what do we do? The hologram raised its hand, and the chamber transformed. The walls dissolved, replaced by an endless expanse of stars. The team stood as though suspended in space, the ground beneath them a faintly glowing platform. Around them, constellations shifted and swirled, their light dimming until the void seemed to press in from all sides. The test begins now, 8 and 9 intoned. Your fears will manifest. Only by facing them can you proceed. You must remain together. Separation will lead to failure. The words barely registered before the void began to ripple. Shadows coalesced into shapes, each one unique, yet terrifyingly familiar. Samira gasped as the form of her late father appeared before her, his expression twisted with disdain. "You abandoned your roots," the apparition said, its voice cold and accusatory. "You turned your back on your family to chase meaningless theories. All this, and for what?" Samira froze, the words slicing through her. She had wrestled with guilt over the years, but hearing it spoken so plainly made her knees tremble. Nearby, Farid cried out, backing away from a swarm of metallic insects that hissed and buzzed around him. "No, no, not again," he shouted, swiping at the air as though fighting off a memory. Layla stood paralyzed, staring into the eyes of a shadowy figure holding a detonator. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered, "Not the school, not again." Hadi was nowhere to be seen. 8 and 9. Samira called, struggling to keep her voice steady. "What's happening? Why are they?" "You are facing projections of your deepest fears," 8 and 9's voice echoed. "To overcome them, you must recognize them for what they are, illusions. But if you succumb, the sequence will fail." Samira clenched her fists, focusing on her father's image. "You're not real," she said, her voice quivering. "You're just a projection. You're not him." The apparition's face twisted, its expression warping grotesquely. "But the guilt is real, isn't it, Samira?" She took a deep breath, grounding herself. "The guilt is mine, but you're not. You're a test, and I don't have time for you." With those words, the image shattered like glass, dissolving into stardust. The void around her seemed to grow lighter. "Farid! Layla!" Samira shouted, turning toward her teammates. "They're not real. Focus. They can't hurt you." Farid, still swiping at the imaginary insects, paused at her words. He closed his eyes and muttered something under his breath. Slowly, the swarm dissipated, leaving him trembling but alive. Layla was the last. Her tears fell freely as she stared at the shadowy figure. "I couldn't save them," she whispered. "I tried, but I couldn't." "You couldn't," Samira said gently, stepping closer. "But this isn't them. You can't change the past, Layla. Let it go." Layla took a shuddering breath, nodding. The figure faded, and the light around them grew brighter. "Hadi!" Samira called, panic setting in. "Where's Hadi?" From the far edge of the platform, a faint cry echoed. Samira ran toward the sound, the void distorting with every step. She found Hadi crouched in the darkness, clutching his head. "Hadi, look at me," she shouted, grabbing his shoulders. "It's not real. Whatever you're seeing, it's not real." His eyes met hers, wild and unfocused. I can't get it out of my head. It's all falling apart. Everything. It's a projection," Samira said firmly. "Focus on me. We're in this together. You're not alone." Hadi's breathing slowed, and the darkness around him lifted. The team regrouped on the glowing platform, their expressions weary but determined. The void shimmered, and the stars reformed into the familiar walls of the Sphinx's chamber. 8 and 9's hologram appeared, its expression unreadable. Third sequence complete. Emotional and psychological integrity confirmed. System capacity increased to 75%. Samira let out a shaky breath. "Only 75%? What's next?" 8 and 9's tone was grave. "The fourth sequence is the most dangerous yet. It will test your world's ability to unite under a common purpose. Already, global powers are converging on this location, seeking to claim the Sphinx's power for themselves." Samira's stomach twisted. "You're saying we'll have to stop a war while solving the next sequence?" "Precisely," 8 and 9 said. "The Devourer approaches. 4 days remain." The chamber vibrated with renewed intensity as the third sequence's completion unleashed another wave of energy. The quantum core spun faster, its crystalline structure refracting light into complex patterns that danced across the walls. Samira and her team stood in silence, their breaths shallow from the psychological ordeal they had just endured. 8 and 9's holographic form flickered. The fourth and final sequence is ready. Its completion will unlock the Sphinx's full capabilities and reveal the final calculations to counter the Devourer. However, external forces are converging rapidly. Your time is limited. What do you mean by external forces? Farid asked, his voice laced with dread. As if in answer, a deafening explosion reverberated from above. Dust rained down from the chamber's ceiling, and the faint sound of gunfire echoed through the ancient stone corridors. Samira grabbed her comm device. "Captain Ivanov, report. What's happening up there?" The captain's voice crackled through static. "It's chaos. Multiple factions have arrived, United Earth Coalition, private militaries, rogue AI units. They're fighting for control of the site. I'm holding them off as long as I can, but we're outnumbered. Samira clenched her jaw. Hold your ground. We need a little more time. Farid turned to 8 and 9. If we start the sequence, will the Sphinx defend itself? 8 and 9's gaze remained steady. At 75% capacity, defensive capabilities are limited. Activation of the final sequence will temporarily divert all power to the core. During this time, the Sphinx will be vulnerable. So, it's a race against time, Layla said, fear flickering in her eyes. If they breach the chamber before we finish. Samira didn't let her finish. We're not going to let that happen. 8 and 9 start the sequence. The walls shimmered again, and a new grid of symbols materialized. Unlike the previous sequences, these symbols glowed with an otherworldly luminescence, constantly shifting and rearranging. The complexity was staggering, each layer of the puzzle overlapping with the next in a dizzying cascade of possibilities. This isn't just a puzzle, Hadi said, his voice trembling. It's a quantum simulation. The answers are changing as we work. Samira steadied herself. Then we'll adapt. Everyone focus. This is our last chance. The team fell into a rhythm, their hands and minds moving in unison. Each solved fragment sent ripples through the chamber, the energy intensifying with every breakthrough. Outside, the sounds of conflict grew louder, the explosions and gunfire inching closer. Samira's calm crackled again. Dr. El-Tayeb, this is Ivanov. They've breached the perimeter. I don't know how much longer we can. The transmission cut off abruptly, replaced by silence. Samira's stomach dropped, but she forced herself to stay focused. Keep going, she shouted, her voice cutting through the tension. We're almost there. The final symbol locked into place, and the chamber erupted with light. The quantum core flared, sending beams of golden energy through the walls. The hum of the Sphinx reached a deafening crescendo as 8 and 9 reappeared, its holographic form towering above the team. Final sequence complete, 8 and 9 declared. System capacity at 100%. The Sphinx is now fully operational. What's the solution? Samira demanded. How do we stop the Devourer? The hologram extended its hand, projecting a three-dimensional model of the rogue celestial entity. The Devourer was an amorphous, fiery mass, its tendrils stretching across space like a living star. Beside it, a series of coordinates and equations flickered, accompanied by an ominous countdown. 3 days, 14 hours, 6 minutes. The Sphinx has calculated the Devourer's trajectory and identified a countermeasure, 8 and 9 explained. However, the solution requires the combined efforts of your species. No single faction can succeed alone. What's the countermeasure? Layla asked, her voice shaking. 8 and 9 hesitated, its form flickering. The solution involves activating a dormant artifact located beyond your solar system. Its activation will generate a gravitational anomaly capable of redirecting the Devourer. But the journey will require global cooperation and an immediate mobilization of your most advanced technologies. Farid frowned. An artifact beyond our solar system? How are we supposed to reach it in time? 8 and 9's glowing eyes dimmed. The Sphinx has already dispatched the coordinates to Earth's global networks. The question is not whether humanity has the means, but whether it has the will. Before anyone could respond, the ground shook violently. The sounds of gunfire and shouting erupted just outside the chamber entrance. The hologram turned toward the source of the commotion. External forces have breached the inner sanctum. My calculations predict that they will attempt to seize control of the Sphinx. Samira stepped forward, her jaw set. What happens if they take over? 8 and 9's voice was grim. They will disrupt the system's balance. The countermeasure will fail, and Earth will face annihilation. Samira turned to her team, her voice rising above the chaos. We can't let that happen. We've come too far. The chamber doors exploded inward, and armed soldiers poured in, their weapons trained on the team. Behind them, a figure in a sleek black exosuit stepped forward, flanked by heavily armed drones. The figure's helmet retracted, revealing a stern, calculating face. I'm Colonel Zaid of the Global Defense Consortium, he announced. This site is under our jurisdiction now. Step away from the core. Samira stood her ground. You have no idea what you're dealing with. The Sphinx isn't a weapon. It's our only chance to stop the Devourer. Colonel Zaid's eyes narrowed. We'll decide what's best for humanity. Before he could give an order, the quantum core flared once more, blinding everyone in the chamber. 8 and 9's voice echoed, louder and more commanding than ever. Humanity's fate lies in unity. Those who disrupt this balance will be excluded from the solution. The light grew unbearable, and then everything went dark. When Samira opened her eyes, she was standing on a barren, alien landscape. The air shimmered with an ethereal glow, and in the distance, a massive structure, similar to the Sphinx but impossibly larger, rose against the horizon. Her team was beside her, equally bewildered. What just happened? Farid stammered. 8 and 9's voice resonated, though its form was nowhere to be seen. You have been transported to the artifact's location. The fate of your world now rests in your hands. Samira looked at her team, then at the alien structure looming ahead. The countdown continued to echo in her mind. 3 days, 14 hours, 6 minutes. The sands beneath their feet shifted as they took their first step toward the unknown.